Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And we're going to be talking about the latest with Jordan Peterson as he was invited to Michaela Community School by its head, Katharine Birbalsingh. And she came under fire by the public, by various people that strongly dislike Mr. Peterson, or doctor, I should say. And now she's basically canceled by extension or by association. We're going to talk about this. We're going to explore this and figure out what the heck is going on. Please welcome my co-host today. First, we've got a guy who may someday play Jordan Peterson on the big screen, we hope. It's Mark Pellegrino.
Thanks, Rucka.
And we've got a guy who may someday actually, be on the big screen himself. I mean, the Greek market can use a guy like him. It's Nikos Sotirakopoulos.
If we get $50 in Super Chat, I'm going to say the crazy Nikos-related Jordan Peterson story ever at the end of the episode.
All right, there's a challenge.
There's a challenge. Okay, so on what happened. So imagine if there was a person, someone in education who said, look, everyone is talking about how education is letting down people from disadvantaged backgrounds, working class people, and people from ethnic minorities, which are the things that we hear all the time, rightly so, that education is letting these people down. So instead of constantly discussing this, one person says, I'm going to do something. I'm going to open a school that is going to help underprivileged kids rise up in life. So imagine if this person, let's call her Katharine, opens a school without tuition fees, so free school, probably what in the States you'd call charter school, in a non-privileged area, in a suburb in London where mostly kids don't get a decent chance in education. And when kids would show up, they would say, look, I'm not going to do what everyone else is doing, which is treating you as special cases, treating you as set for failure, treating you as a future statistics. I'm going to treat you as people who are capable of reading Shakespeare, of excelling in maths, and also of people who have individual agency, which means you are responsible for everything happening in this school in terms of your behavior. I'm not going to judge your parents or your background. Whatever you do here is on you. And I'm going to teach you some good discipline. Now, imagine if this school not only opens and invited these kids, but also at the end of every year, it would show results that would put it towards the top of the country. So kids that would otherwise, again, be left in oblivion or live in an environment of bullying and underperformance would find themselves with excellent scores. How do you think the left would react to this educator and to this school? You would say that the left would start applauding and clapping. They would say, finally, someone did whatever we've been advocating all these years. Now, this education exists. It's a heroine of mine. It's Katharine Birbalsingh. And that school exists, and it's called Michaela. She named the school in honoring a friend of hers, an educator who died some years ago, very young, from cancer. So, and this last Friday, she invited Jordan Peterson to her school. She very often invites people in her school. Soon, there's going to be a common friend of ours speaking in Michaela. And it was not the first time with Jordan Peterson visit that she was in hot waters. The educational establishment keeps attacking him, vitriolic attacks. They put all sorts of hurdles to the school, and they keep telling bad things about this school. So before we even discuss the Jordan Peterson incident, which in itself is outlandish and very weird and quite telling about the culture, I want to put this on the table. Why this school, which should be every leftist's vision coming to reality, why is this school constantly under attack from the left? Could it be that the leftists, at the end of the day, don't really care about children from non-privileged background doing well in life?
Well,
you go first. You go ahead, Rucka.
Well, I mean, of course, laissez-faire is the way for individuals to thrive, and justice would be the result of, would be whatever the outcome would be justice. But that's not, justice. If you read Atlas Shrugged, when when Reardon is being pressured by his mother to give, I think, Reardon's brother a leg up, she says like, oh, it's always justice with you. It's always cold justice. It's a moment reading that when I realized like, wow, yeah, actually having the money that you earned or having the results that you worked for, that is justice. And taking it away from someone to give to someone else, or just giving away what's yours out of guilt, that is not justice. That is, the opposite of justice. That is unjust. So yeah, the people who are always complaining the loudest about the disadvantages of, various groups, oftentimes, I'm sorry to say, although there are some legitimate grievances one could, complain about, but all too often the people complaining the loudest, they don't actually want to see those people succeed. What they want to do is to punish people who are successful until everyone is equally miserable and underground.
Yeah,
Mark,
and
you had something?
Yeah. No, I would say they're not interested in their thriving at all. They're interested in recruits. They want people to get behind their narrative, and their narrative is anti-individualistic. And when you teach kids that to be independent, when you teach them there are objective rules of behavior, that they have to be responsible for everything that they do, you're inculcating in them the idea that they are their own person, and that person can't be swayed so easily. They're not drawn into narratives, and that's what the left wants. They want a narrative, an anti-individualistic narrative, and this school does not fit that. It defies it.
So last Friday, this school, which very often brings speakers to for the students to come across different kind of ideas, invited Jordan Peterson. So to begin with, if you get one of the world's top intellectuals to your school, this should be something that should be appreciated. Someone whose speaker's fee probably cost for one appearance more than my house. Anyway, so Jordan Peterson arrives apparently, as the school headmistress Katharine Birbalsingh says, he was in tears by what he saw, by the fact that the students would address her as Miss and him as Sir or something. So he sat around, he spoke with the kids, and then he left. And at night, when he had the talk in London, he mentioned also his visit to that school, that he was impressed. But then started the storm against Katharine Birbalsingh, when she posted a tweet with Jordan Peterson. And the interesting thing is the kind of reactions that this visit targeted. So these were not the usual reactions that said, don't send your teachers to this school, or we think what you did is bad. These reactions took a different form. And this form was, go to the authorities and target this school under the PREVENT program and claim that this school is not standing up to its safeguarding duties towards children. Now, what is the PREVENT program? What is the program that the people who want to cancel Ms. Birbalsingh went to authorities to complain with? PREVENT is a program that targets extremism in school. Mostly these days they will tell you it's for right-wing extremists, but let's be frank, this is a program that came around the time when Islamic terrorism was a threat, and the idea was to find very early signs of Islamic radicalization among children. That was at least the initial plan. Now, we could discuss whether such a program should exist in schools. That's for a different discussion. So basically, they would go to the authorities and says, the fact that Jordan Peterson is in that school puts these kids in threat of becoming domestic terrorists. I heard the term incel many times, that the king of incels is in that school, and that the authorities should intervene. Other reports were for a hate crime. We didn't know what the hate crime is, but the fact that Jordan Peterson was there was a hate crime, apparently. And also many reports regarding the safeguarding of the kids. The idea that the kids were put in danger because this dangerous guy were walking around them. And some people even mention things like his mental status, that it's not very stable, and that would put children into danger. So what I find very interesting is this. This to me sounds like an elementary school or the kindergarten mentality. I cannot deal with the person I disagree, so I run to authorities. And I'm convinced that two things could be happening. One is that these people actually think that there's a danger that Jordan Peterson is going to turn these 10-year-old or 14-year-old kids to terrorists, in which case, I don't know what's happening in the mind of these people who believe this and who went to authorities with this, or they're so cynical that they're making use of a very dangerous and slippery slope legislation to pass their agenda and to win scalps in the culture wars. And I don't know which of the two is worse, thinking that indeed Jordan Peterson is going to turn these kids into extremists, or the fact that you're just cynically going to the authorities and wasting their time with this type of crap.
Don't you think both are possible, Nikos?
Maybe.
I think some people in that group are cynical and using the authorities to push an agenda. Some people actually buy the agenda and are terrified, hysterical, because you've seen the way people respond to Rand. You know, they read Salon.com's version of Ayn Rand. They've never read a word of her, and they think she's the biggest threat to humanity that there is. And they believe it. They believe it. Sans knowledge. And I'm sure there's plenty of people in that cesspool of protests who think the same thing.
Well, what would you guys say if like the speaker invited was someone who is like, you know, like Richard Spencer, the alt-right guy, or Alex Jones, someone who is like, who arguably is sort of cultivating either domestic terrorists or just like absolutely not a good influence for young students to be around in school? What would you think then?
Well, then the protest would be legitimate, because those guys are literally unhinged, objectively unhinged. But what they don't like about Jordan Peterson is he has been probably the loudest and most influential voice against the woke movement, against the dominant narrative out there. And he's been one of the most successful academics at reversing it in the eyes of, I think, the population at large, reversing the tide. So he's a threat. So there's a difference between the hysterical reaction to somebody who's a threat to your narrative and the justified reaction to a Looney Tune who's exposing your children to ideas that are, fantasies and scary fantasies at best.
So I think the main issue then is that Peterson is not nearly as bad as they're alleging. So it's not so much that they're running to authority like little kids, because if Peterson was as bad as they're saying, then it would probably be right for them to use their voice to keep him from coming to the school.
I think Nikos makes a point, though, that people are trying to resolve issues through third parties like this, authorities, as opposed to discussing openly what they think is a problem with each other and resolving it on their own. In the old days, we resolved problems with each other on the playground. We didn't go to the teachers, the new naids, teachers' assistants to resolve conflicts. We learned to resolve them on our own. And it seems like now increasingly people are more and more dependent on authorities doing things for them, getting their, seeing that their wishes are achieved for them, as opposed to, questioning and debating and sorting things out and working it out on their own.
So in the desert, in the wasteland, which is the education system, the fact that one person can run a school so successfully and have the judgment to do the thing that she does, I trust Katharine Birbalsingh, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering her surname, that she knows the difference between an Alex Jones or a Richard Spencer. So what I would do if I would invite Jordan Peterson to my school, I would send an email to the parents saying, hey, this guy is coming. We know some people, he might not be everyone's cup of tea. If you want, don't send your school in that talk. My judgment is that he's a good storyteller. He's an interesting person. I don't agree with him on everything. I think it will be a gain for the kids, for Peterson to visit the school. That's what I would do. And again, if the people who did all this reaction, if they really think that Jordan Peterson is a terrorist level of, is in threat of turning these kids to extremists, then these people, something is wrong with them. Something is wrong with their judgment, with the way they view the world. I really feel almost concern for them, because this means you have completely lost touch with reality. And also notice here the contradiction. They are saying that Jordan Peterson is a white supremacist. They are saying that all these silly things. So here you have a school which is the true champion of diversity. Why would a white supremacist go to that school and be in tears with how well this school is operating? So you have to see that your narrative collapses. You have to see that your narrative is absolutely ridiculous. So
that presumes introspection, and I think that we know by this point that we could say these folks are on the left, that the left generally does not have that faculty of introspection. So they don't know when they're saying something paradoxical.
And again, this is not the first time that Miss Birbalsingh finds herself in hot waters. Also, unfortunately for the educational establishment, she's a conservative, which is very, not unique, but very unusual in education. Also, she's now the chair for the social mobility commitment. So now the new vitriol is that she did everything because she's elevated by the Tory party or horrible things like that. So again, you see someone creating, you see someone doing very good work, and all you have to say is try to find a way to destroy her. Again, I feel sad about these people, and really, it's really bad that these people are on the majority, at least the vocal minority in education. So this was not an isolated incident.
Well, it's unfortunate that the people in the education establishment don't see an example like hers and use it as an opportunity to figure out what she's doing right and incorporate what she's doing right into their own educational establishments. We saw this with Pluckrose, Lindsay, and Boghossian when they exposed the gender studies and the grievance studies groups. Those people didn't react with profound introspection, with a sigh of, oh my God, we're doing something wrong. Let's make this a real science. They attacked everybody there. They tried to destroy them and break them down. And that's exactly what this establishment is doing now. Whatever breaks the narrative, that anti-capitalist, anti-individualistic narrative that puts everybody in their group box and everybody's got to stay in their group box, has to be destroyed because it's too compelling.
And because it's too good. And because it's too good.
It's too compelling because it's good.
So people, if you doubt what I'm telling you about this school, the UK has this system where you go and you can see how each school did in the final GCSE exams. Go and check how Michaela did. So this is the equivalent of an achievement like, anyway, I don't want to give Atlas right examples, but it's a massive achievement and people want to see it and want to throw rocks on it. So I would say same on these people.
But there was an educator in Chicago that did the same thing. I can't remember her name, but she was sort of the pride of Leonard Peikoff. She was a great educator, and there have been great educators who have done the same thing with marginalized communities that give the lie to the whole racist diatribe that IQ is a genetic thing. No, it's not. It's about exposure to information. It's about the kind of atmosphere that you grow up in, and you see it in the high IQ tests of people in marginalized communities where they're allowed to go into these schools where they can flourish, where they have structure, they have real academics thrown at them, and they take the challenges like champions, like anybody else.
Yep.
I've got some challenging remarks, but first let's read some super chats as we grow not very close to the $50 goal, at which point Nikos will tell us a story involving Jordan Peterson. So
involving myself and Jordan, and something Jordan Peterson related. Let's not
even
do
better
advertising.
Jonathan Honig, thank you, Mark Moses. Then Dave Goodman with $5 says Jordan Peterson is a neurotic, malevolent universer / Kantian, largely detached from reality. He is the M2, like misintegration 2, Peikoff warned about. What, you guys have much of an opinion? Peterson is, calling him neurotic, first of all, I think is not medically responsible. We cannot diagnose him.
Well, we've criticized Jordan Peterson. There's hours and hours of objectivists and ourselves here criticizing Jordan Peterson. Everyone who spends 2 minutes around our universe knows our take on Jordan Peterson. This doesn't mean that he's a threat to kids. This doesn't mean that he's not an interesting guy to get to school. He's a guy who knows how to tell stories, who knows the power of stories. And I think he can be at least an interesting adding to the cocktail of knowledge that these kids get.
And I don't know if Dave was saying that Peterson should be boycotted.
No,
he was using his $5 to voice his opinion. I'm not sure there's sufficient objectivist analysis of Peterson. I think there's some, but there could be more. A bona fide objectivist analyzing what Peterson has written and said.
But I think there's things that he offers to people that resonate clearly with men. He offers structure and rules of behavior. He looks back to old stories to tell us, how what's moral, what's good, what's right, what's heroic. And even though he incorporates, I think, too much of a malevolent perspective because of his psychoanalytic background, there's something about recognizing that and overcome and in his work attempting to use objective rules of behavior to overcome that's very good, and that people need to hear, because I think more people come at the world from that perspective than from ours.
So we did a whole conference, now that I remember it, on Jordan Peterson in August of 2019. Razi organized it in London. Also, if you put on YouTube Sotirakopoulos Peterson leads, you will see a whole talk I gave on Jordan Peterson. If someone wants to find out about our view, I mean, we don't all have the same view, but at least my view or Razi's.
Michael with $5 says, "Is JP more Kant or Plato?" I think he goes on. I think he's more Plato combined with some Enlightenment elements. From what I picked up of Peterson, he's very much like a modern, like postmodern, I guess, if you could call him, Descartes and onward are modern philosophers, and then after the German counter-revolution, you can loosely say like after modern. Maybe calling them postmodern is confusing because there is a postmodern movement, but Peterson buys into the skepticism of the pragmatists, the skepticism of those who say you, the individual, can't really know things for sure. So then what do we turn to? And there's the a perspective that like you turn to the group, or I think Peterson's hot take is you turn to the stories passed through us, like the stories that have withstood the test of time, because them being passed down through so many generations makes them true, whatever that even means. And it's like it could have an evolutionary benefit. The Bible and other popular stories, or Pinocchio, they've got an evolutionary there's a reason these stories have withstood the test of time, right? And they're true for that reason. So I don't know, if you try to put your finger on what exactly Peterson is saying, anyone could say, no, he says the opposite here. And then you go there. No, he actually says the opposite. It's like whack-a-mole with him. He says so many things. It's like he went out searching for every wrong perspective out there and threw in a little bit of good stuff in there. This is me talking here. He's basically voicing bad philosophical perspectives that are incorrect, but he kind of attaches them to good life habits, which then make him seem like a force for good. But I could be wrong as well. There's so much to him. He's a deeply complex man. And also Carolina with 50 Mexican pesos. Thank you for that. I'm sad to say, not very close to actual $50 USD. But then Marvin comes in with 10 euros or pounds, rather, bringing us, I don't know how close we're at. We need a dollar count from
Daniel, let us know if we reach the $50.
Yeah, let us know where we're at. But yeah, one of you have anything to respond to what I just said? Or
no, what you said, this makes sense. Philosophically, there are many problems with Jordan Peterson. I think his worst moment that shows his metaphysics is when Sam Harris is trying for 1.5 hours to persuade him to commit on whether there is such a thing as reality, and Peterson cannot commit on that in their first podcast meeting. But again, this is not a discussion on the merits of Jordan Peterson. This is a discussion on whether Jordan Peterson is someone who, when he visits someone's schools. Some random people whose kids are not even in that school go to the police and say, hey, your anti-terrorist preventive legislation should be at play here.
John, I'm sorry, but what is he a force for in general? I mean, to me, he's not just I think he had to develop a kind of ad hoc philosophy when he was attacked by the woke mob, and so it was primarily driven by that, all the stuff that drives the woke mob, but it attempts to give people a structure that he doesn't think they have, and in that sense, I think he's a positive influence for many people. Where you can't say the same thing for a Spencer, you can't say the same thing for an Alex Jones. Maybe you can put them in the same universe, and I definitely don't think that in the time that he has with those children, they're going to scratch the surface so deeply that they're going to find all those philosophical flaws and be able to question them or understand them. In that day that he's visiting them, he's going to respect the structure that's giving these kids confidence, and the confidence that the teaching staff has in them to give them complex information, like reading Shakespeare at a young age, which they can do when they're pressed to it. And they might get a few rules for life, like make your bed in the morning when you get up, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, I think there's two separate conversations we're having here. One is kind of among students of objectivism. How do we look at Peterson? And in my opinion, and maybe you guys agree, he is a force for bad ultimately. Left unchecked, his ideas bring about religion and kind of reject Enlightenment individualism. And in a kind of the net result, I think, would ultimately be negative if no better ideas are pinned up against his, although in the context of today's culture, maybe he is a step in the right direction compared to the absolute nihilistic postmodern left that is sort of dominant. So that's how bad things are, that Peterson may be a force for good, but ultimately he could be ushering in the worst yet to come. Let me just finish my point. The other conversation here is, should he be invited to speak at a school? And probably yes, because there's no reason for him to be seen as so detrimental in today's context.
He just strikes me as an intellectual conservative. I mean, with all of their flaws, basically with all of their flaws. And I don't know, Nikos, what do you think of that? Is that too simplistic?
I'm not even I'm political. I'm not even sure if he's a conservative. So in a different time, the guy would be just someone in the center. But personally, Peterson, at the time of my life that I came across him, and on the context that I have, was of big help, because I kept the good things and I had the judgment based on the tools I had from objectivism, which I was like 3-4 years in, to reject the things that didn't matter.
And anyway, do you think, wait, real quickly, do you think that's because you came from a Marxist background? Like, I was extreme left, and I feel like I had to go through that stage of a sort of a flirtation with conservative intellectuals who did appeal to me, who did give me something very interesting, because they did have some of their ideals were grounded in reality. Some of they were definitely more in the world in many respects. I'm not talking about the theocrats like the Dennis Prager system, but they did offer something that the people on the left were not, and it was a necessary stepping stone to get through it and then beyond it to what I am now.
He made Solzhenitsyn again culturally relevant, but interestingly, one of my big problems with Peterson is that his criticism of communism is not deep and penetrating enough. But that's for another discussion. But again, as I've said many times, if I'd see Jordan Peterson on the street, I would have things to tell him that in a personal context would be more like, you've been at some point in my life, you've been of assistance, and I appreciate this. Without obviously him knowing.
If Dennis Prager is a theocrat, then Peterson is, the Pope. I mean, Peterson, I think so. People like Prager and Shapiro, they kind of try to make the case that the founding fathers of America were they were a blend of Greek and Jewish, Judeo-Christian influences, bringing about this good blend. Whereas Peterson, it's just like he just kind of scrubs the slate clean, doesn't seem to have any respect for individualism. Well, I shouldn't say that, but he's not. I think he's worse than Prager. And he's much more friendly to actual theocracy. And as Aaron points out in the chat room here, this quote by Peterson says, maybe it's not about you, man. Maybe it's about the church and your duty to the past. So this is the type of quote that makes people see Peterson as sort of friendly with the race realist, with the white supremacist. And no, Peterson is not those things. He is, I'm sorry to say, in today's context, basically somewhat on the right end of the center. But I mean, yeah, these ideas do have consequences, just like on the left or on the biological, the Brett Weinstein corner of the intellectual scene. You have ideas that would result in eugenics if left unchecked. Ideas do have consequences, and some of the stuff Peterson says would have enormously detrimental consequences if they continue to grow and left unchecked. And I invite everyone to subscribe to Jordan Peterson on YouTube. He's posting videos at least once a day, and judge for yourself. See, if for every one message he says about cleaning your room, there's at least 9 or 10 points about that are anti-capitalist, that are anti-individualist, that are pro-religious rule, basically dark age anarchy. I'll say dark age anarchy. Basically, you're not the opposite of rule of law. By the way, Jonathan Honig with 99 cents, and then Mark Moses with 1893, bringing us, I believe, to $50. So we got a story coming up.
Yeah. So first announcements.
Before announcements, I got a point to make as well, if you guys don't mind. This is not going to make me popular with some people, but do you remember when when the young man whose name might have been Muhammad brought a homemade clock to school and his teacher thought it was a bomb? This was big in the news like 10 years ago or so. And so the teacher, of course, as you would expect, was in a lot of trouble. Why would you assume this kid brought a bomb to school? Why? Because he's Muslim. And of course, Obama invited the kid to the White House to show him his clock, and everyone was so proud of the little boy and all of that. But I remember Bill Maher saying at the time, he said, yeah, of course the teacher should apologize for thinking it was a bomb, blah, blah, blah. But Bill Maher here saying, wouldn't it be great if one of the adults in this kid's life told him, the reason your teacher thought you brought a bomb to school is because many members of our religion have committed many terrorist attacks in the name of Islam. So this was Bill Maher kind of pointing out the uncomfortable fact that, yes, the kid should not have to be profiled, but the reason he's being profiled is because so many people in the name of Islam have done such acts. Now, what makes me bring this up now? This is not going to make me popular, but I will say this. Wouldn't it be great if the Petersons of the world would say, no, I'm not a white supremacist, and the people calling me white supremacist are off their rocker. But we conservatives and we, the new right, and we Republicans, whatever, we conservatives have done a piss poor job at distancing ourselves from white supremacists in recent years. We have increasingly had tunnel vision on the left and pretended that the left are the only thing that needs to be defeated intellectually. And we've allowed all types of kooks and nutty racists and white supremacists and authoritarians into our ranks, and they feel more at home than ever among us. So maybe we need to do a better job at understanding why we're not white supremacists and why we want nothing to do with white supremacists. So there's kind of my sort of perspective, and you guys are welcome to comment, or we can move on to
I don't know many conservatives of the like of Jordan Peterson who has in any way sanctioned any white supremacists, but anyway, this is not the topic of the day. So
it is the topic of the day because this is what he's being accused of. So no, he hasn't sanctioned white supremacy, but when you refuse to distance yourself from the person standing next to you who is a white supremacist at a certain point, I mean, aren't you culpable?
So who has he not distanced himself from?
Not nobody in particular, but the conservative scene is now a place where you cannot throw a rock. Oh, Mark, come on. You cannot throw a rock without hitting a white supremacist if you're hanging around Republicans.
Well, I don't know about that, but they do. There is definitely a problem that I think most in the conservative movement that I know of disavow. But I think it's mainly because the left is able to control the narrative, and they make it seem like a much more powerful force than it is. But it is there. I'm not denying that it is, and perhaps it is the right thing for somebody in his position to do.
It's not only there, but among today's Republicans, they kind of like giggle about it. They think it's funny when people point out white supremacy growing in their ranks. They think, oh, it's just the left. It's all the left. But if anyone who criticizes you is the left, then, I mean, all types of things are going to turn for the worse. So anyway, Just wanted to put that out.
What prominent people on the right? I mean, we're taking this conversation in an entirely different direction. But what prominent people on the right do you know support like a Spencer?
They don't.
Prominent people considered intellectuals that a lot of people follow on the right.
That they support Spencer? Not any, but virtually everyone who's on the right today is 1 or 2 degrees separated from Spencer. So the guys
that's an incredible thing to say. I think that's an incredibly exaggerated.
You need to hang out with these people more and pay attention to the younger.
No. Well, maybe you're getting it in Austin. Are you getting it in Austin? Is that what's happening?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Go to Republican events, hang around them, hang out with the people who work.
No, I don't want to.
Well, I mean, I have, and I'm telling you, like the stuff
you hear white supremacists talk. You hear
I hear people who downplay the problem of people like Nick Fuentes and Richard Spencer. They think it's nothing to be worried about. So I'm saying everyone's now 1 degree separated. If the Republicans
Isn't downplaying it mean that they just don't think they're intellectually important and they're?
I don't think Nick Fuentes is intellectually important.
Who does? I mean, who does with a brain? Nobody. I mean, to me, these people are just marginalized, fringy pricks, and I don't think anybody with a brain takes them seriously. Maybe there's somebody in a trailer living somewhere, in the Appalachians that takes these jerk offs seriously, but I can't see anybody in that party actually, But anyway,
if they could get away with it, if the Republicans could get away with it, they would let Nick Fuentes in their ranks without.
That's a heavy thing to say.
It's absolutely true, and I've done the research. I've hung around these people, and I'm telling you, it's the side of the conservative movement Ben Shapiro is embarrassed by and doesn't want to talk about. Ben Shapiro's own employees are much friendlier with Nick Fuentes and probably personally friends with him. And that is what I've seen.
We can't know that. Now we are.
Well, I can know that because I know that.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway, announcements. So I talk about. Oh, sorry, Rucka, go on.
All right. Joe Show with €5 says Peterson's recent hateful rhetoric towards trans people is a reason for me to not want my children near Peterson. All right. Well, education should be private, so every parent could make that decision. Roland with €199 says Rucka's right on. Thank you, Roland. I can use all the support I can get at a time like this.
What is Rucka right on about? Peterson or the depravity of the Republican Party?
There is much less daylight between, or much more daylight. Yeah, much less daylight between the Republican Party and actual racists of the right. Nick says Rucka has bought into the media narrative. I mean, if believing my own sense data is buying into the leftist narrative, and this is exactly what people do whenever they hear something that's inconvenient, they say, oh no, that's just what the left told you. I have my own eyes and ears. I've hung around Republicans. I've hung around conservatives. And I'm telling you, the only reason Nick Fuentes is not out and openly part of the Republican mainstream is because they can't get away with it yet. Marilyn with $5. And I'm not saying these people all agree with Fuentes. I'm saying they don't think he's anything to worry about, and they see all the hysteria around the alt-right in their view is all just the left. And you see it here as well, the way that I'm perceived. Marilyn with $5, thank you for that. Should I read the announcements and then we get the story, or what do you guys?
Let me mention the announcements because it's about the battle of ideas. So I mentioned Katharine Birbalsingh is a heroine of mine. The way I managed to meet her was through my participation in the battle of ideas for many, many, many years. The Battle of Ideas is the #1, in my view, intellectual event in London. So it's 2 days of debate, more than sometimes 100 panels on any topic you can imagine, from politics, culture wars, philosophy, history, football, art, anything. So with very good speakers. And this year, they're going to be, if I haven't lost count, 4 objectivists in the Battle of Ideas. Myself, Yaron, Don Watkins, and the great leader Razi Ginsberg, who's going to be on a panel on football. So we're going to have something like a stall, something like a table. So a team from ARCUK is going to be there with our merchandise, with our leaflets, with our books, with our ideas. And we invite you all, if you're in London at that or somewhere close, in the weekend of, I think, 15th and 16th of October, or 14th and 15th. join the Battle of Ideas. There is a discount code, which I think 15th and 16th of October, it's a weekend. There's a discount code that Daniel is going to put on the description. So again, this has been the Battle of Ideas has changed my life. I need to do a whole episode on how Battle of Ideas has changed my life. This is going to be my 12th, I think, Battle of Ideas. So more on that. We're going to have probably a whole episode on the Battle of Ideas. Okay, now the story. Yes, there's a link with the discount. There's no discount codes. Okay, the story. 2019, I'm invited at Leeds Salon in Leeds to give a talk about Jordan Peterson. So the title is Jordan Peterson Phenomenon, with obviously the sole speaker being myself. So as I usually do, I arrive something like 2 hours earlier at the venue, and I drink my coffee outside. And then at some point, we start setting up cameras, on that stuff. So I do test. And then I see a gentleman coming in the room with the 12 rules for life. And he goes to the organizer and he says, "Can I talk to Dr. Peterson?" And he says, "What?" He says, I came here for him to sign my book." And he says, "But Dr. Peterson is not here." I said, "But who is that guy? Who is that guy?" Anyway, we explained to that guy that I'm not Jordan Peterson, but he gets disappointed for 1 second, but then he sits down and he watches the talk. So at the end, I go to him and I say, "Hey, I hope it wasn't a complete loss of your time, although you didn't meet the actual Jordan Peterson." He says, no, I enjoy it and all that stuff. So these were my 20 seconds of infamy, where someone brought to me the 12 rules of life to sign it, thinking that I am Jordan Peterson. So that's the story.
I might have signed it.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, who is the guy from Dumb and Dumber who's not Jim Carrey, and then he was in Newsroom? Who's
Jeff Daniels.
Yeah, he once told a story on one of those late night shows about how someone mistook him for Jeff Bridges. So he signed the guy an autograph. He wrote, "Best wishes, Jeff Bridges."
I'll ask him that. I'll see him in November.
That sounds cool. Is it a Big Lebowski like festival you're going to, or
no? He's the one of the principal actors in the show American Rust that I do.
Oh, right. I just mistook him for Jeff Bridges just now. How about that?
Yes, you did. Look at that.
All right. Daniel says 15-16. I don't know what that means.
That's the dates of the Battle of Ideas. Okay. Also, the higher echelons of the Ayn Rand Center UK claim that this is not a $50 story. Anyway, it was great content. So, but thank you very much for your. I thought there was going to be beer, cards, and clothing coming off, but it was all right. No, not yet. Also, okay. I think anyway, more stories at some other point. All right, coming up at 9 p.m. UK time, it's HBTV with Harry Binswanger, and he will do an Ask Me Anything episode. So bring your questions and super chats and all of that. All right, good talk, guys. We definitely explored this topic, that I can tell you. Looking forward to next time, and we'll be back tomorrow for the Daily Objective. Thanks, guys. Thank you. And goodbye.